Well, welcome everybody, and Cannamaste, the circle is enjoined. We gather together in a sense of thanksgiving for this universe, the world, the day, our lives, our friendships, this moment, this community, and this amazing plant that brings us all together. Our faith in cannabis is rooted in thousands of years of human experience, ritual, and practice. We prepare an altar to honor the Cantheists who have gone before, those among our contemporaries, and those who are yet to come. And what we have is, of course, our last cannabis plant of the season that's still growing, joining us today.
Just a little guy, a little girl.
We could have harvested it before, but we thought, well, let's hang on to her until today. So we did. To share in our sacramental practice, you don't need to smoke cannabis in the traditional sense. You can consume it different ways. The thing that we really want is for people to possess it and to share it with each other. And I know that people are alone, so sharing is not as easy, but that's the crux of our belief, is that cannabis is here for us to possess, to cultivate, and to share with one another. And so feel free to ingest by any method, and as often or abundantly as scarcely as you choose to. That's all up to you. We like to start off the ceremony by lighting a candle. Candle is a symbol of life. It's something that we use to light our cannabis. And of course, the flame inhales oxygen and exhales carbon dioxide, just as people do, whereas the cannabis plant takes in carbon dioxide and releases oxygen. So that's part of the perfect harmony and balance that comes between humans and the cannabis plant. So cannabis is but one of Mother Earth Gaia's countless gifts that feed, heal, and enlighten us all. Born of water, soil, air, and light, cannabis reveals our deeper connection with our living world and the necessity for us to respect and live in sacred harmony with the web of life. Cantheism is a non-sectarian sharing of cannabis as a psychotropic link to the plant and to the planet, with all its myriad gifts and manifestations, and to the higher levels of reality. It is our nexus with any other personal religious beliefs that people feel or express as individuals. For the chosen believers, to have and share cannabis are necessities in our lives. It's not a choice. We honor cannabis with high honor and proclaim our sacramental intent, to which everyone may respond. Honor it with high honor.
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 Okay, and so then the next thing we want to do is to do the invocation that really gets the ceremony going. So Mikki, if you could share the screen and pull up the Cannamaste. And I notice already it's in the wrong page.
Share the screen. Here.
We actually do have two mouses, but that, or mice, I guess you would say, but that would even be more of a problem if we were both fighting over what to do.
Yeah,
Let's see, share screen, share screen. What is this? Why isn't it just sharing the screen? Oh, I see, I clicked on the wrong thing. I clicked on the options instead of the actual share.
What are you looking for?
No, that's the wrong one.
Oh, sorry about that.
Now
Let's
where it
try
shows,
this.
oh, stop sharing.
Okay.
Share again. There it is. Okay. Yeah, sorry, it's so little that we can't really tell which one is which. But
Wait,
where is
it? Oh, here it is.
Can you see the? Yeah, it looks like you can. I see.
Can you guys see that?
The Cantheist Creed, that's what we're seeing.
That's
Okay,
the right
good.
thing.
And why are we seeing this?
I'm gonna close that window.
Okay, sorry, I'm gonna close the window here.
It's blocking our view.
Oh, here we go. And
Okay.
I need to let somebody in.
I think it's Michael Kravitz.
Yeah, it is. And can you let him in, please?
Somebody else let him in because we got our screen is tied up right now. Hard with
Or
this.
Steve Shug, I think is okay. So the way the creed works, this is a call and response. So Chris is the leader, and I'll lead the group in the response. So you would say it along with me, but we're going to add a little bit of melody to this.
Hence, we call it an incantation.
No.
We believe that cannabis sativa L is the useful cane and the true hemp.
Therefore, we honor it with high honor.
Cannabis hemp is a restorative natural resource for all to grow, share, and use. Humanity has a unique shared history with this plant.
Therefore, we bring cannabis into our lives.
Cannabis hemp is endowed with safe and effective healing powers, some of which remain unexplained.
Therefore, we offer cannabis to ease suffering and add balance to life.
Hemp is an intuitive sacrament that we use to connect with ourselves and our community.
Therefore, we share cannabis in thanksgiving and deep respect for her resinous effects.
The virtuous cultivation and dissemination of cannabis are honorable professions.
Therefore, we act with integrity and honesty and safeguard fellow Cantheists.
Inhale and pass it on. Cannamaste, Cannamaste. And so, as we like to say in the creed there, the virtuous cultivation, dissemination of cannabis are honorable professions. But in this commercialized world, we have to remind ourselves that cannabis serves a deeper purpose in life, and it's not just about professions and making money. People have endured prison and persecution for this plant ally, and for that, we honor them with high honor.
What's that?
Do you want to take some of it?
That's all right.
Today, we channel ancient truths into our circle. We call this holy smoke a ganja spleef in the spirit of Rastafari. The word Cannamaste, it derives from the traditional Hindu word namaste, and we encourage people to share in a modified Chilam style smoking, which we call safe smoking, and sometimes use a smoking cloth. Each of us sets our own optimum dosage for today's sacred purpose, and some may choose to not smoke at all. Although at least one puff is encouraged, it's up to you what you want to do. People are welcome to smoke as much as they want, to vaporize, use edibles, tinctures, etc., to reach your personal level of what you consider to be a sacramental consciousness, because this is very much between you and the herb. We're just here to share the experience with you. In the circle, we take a puff of the spleef with our holding it in the right hand and place the left hand over our heart.
Should I light it?
That's what we're coming to in a moment
Okay,
here.
all right.
Oh yeah, okay. Look into the eyes of the person when you're sharing it. You look into the eyes of the person next to you. Well, maybe we should just go ahead and light it, huh? Is there something else? And so again, this is a connection back to the
Cannamaste.
Cannamaste. Cannamaste.
Normally, this is going around in a circle, and we normally prepare Cannamaste. We normally prepare the spleef with contributions of cannabis from the people at the gathering, and we roll a nice big one and share it around a few times, and then get into the rest of the ceremony.
And the idea is it completes one circle before we move on to the next parts of the ceremony. And so during the time period when smoking, this is our time for dedications, mentions of people, and expressing Cannamaste, and expressing our own dedications and intentions. And so what we're going to do today, Cannamaste,
Cannamaste.
is we're going to give people, what are we going to give, 5 minutes?
Or a few minutes, yeah.
We'll
3
give
minutes.
people a few minutes, and if you want to say something, you can unmute yourself and express your own dedication. I think I'll just start off with my own dedication that I'm Chris. I want to dedicate the circle to everyone who has discovered the sacred plant and those who've suffered persecution and are even today in prison for this plant, which we hold to be sacred to us. And so, you know, we on the name of a few of our friends that we would like to mention, since it's the 25th anniversary of Prop 215, we would have to, of course, mention Dennis Perone, as well as Jack Harrer. And we have so many friends who passed in the past year. People can name them. But what I want to do really is open this up for anybody else who wants to make a very brief, momentary comment. And then we're going to move to the next phase of the ceremony. You have to unmute yourself, remember.
I would be grateful to mention Dave Sieber, someone who I consider to be a pioneer and a grandfather of the cannabis movements, particularly as those of you who know me know that, you know, hemp and our lower THC varieties, of course, is the career path that I've chosen to specialize in. And of course, in that respect, David Sieber has meant very, very much to me. He is the one who lit me on fire for pyrolysis and biodigestion, which I think are very high value materials for hemp. He has been a drumbeat in my life and a mentor and a prophet in my life in just tremendous ways. And we lost him a few months ago. And so today I dedicate this Cannamaste ceremony to David Sieber.
Honor him with high honor.
Yeah, we honor him with high honor.
And Cannamaste.
Cannamaste. I lost a close friend today, or 2 days ago. I just came back from Clarksdale, Mississippi. And Clarksdale, Mississippi is an interesting town. It's a old historic town that used to hold slaves. It was a slave town. And then once slavery was over, the town was allowed to open up. And so it was a large African-American community that had all the different shops, barber shops and delis and grocery stores, and they were all African owned. I went to this town, I didn't know what to expect. It was a friend that I had the honor to be with for 3 years. He was a really bad man. I never met a racist like this man. I mean, just bad. This man called me. I was in the dispensary at 7 Stars. This man called me out of the blue and told me, I need cannabis. And I said, okay, what do you need it for? He said, man, I can't take this anymore. I said, what's wrong? He said, I lost my arm in an accident. I got acid poured on it and I lost my arm. So I don't have a right arm. He said, I fell and I don't know what happened, but I can't move my body from the waist down. And I'm battling kidney failure, both kidneys, and I'm going through dialysis 3 days out of the week. He said, man, can cannabis help me? I said, I don't know, man. What kind of pain are you dealing with? He said, everything, man, just pain, just constant pain, physical and mental. I said, what are you doing? He goes, I live here with my mom. She's in a wheelchair. She's taking care of me. I said, okay, what can I do for you, man? he said, can marijuana help me? Can you get me marijuana? I said, yeah, of course. I said, where are you? He said, I'm in Clarksdale, Mississippi. I said, man, this is California. He goes, yeah, I know. And I go, well, it's federally illegal, man. I can't do that. I said, we fought hard to do this, and that could jeopardize everything. I know, because I just came out of that war. He said, man, how do I get it? I go, I don't know. I said, I'll ask some, I don't know, man. I really don't know. And we started talking, and I talked to him for 3 hours, just out of everything, just talking. And then I called him the next day, and I talked to him for about 3 hours. And the next day, 3 hours. And every day for 3 years, I talked to this man, every day. Sometimes 3 times a day. This man, I can only say that I feel blessed and honored to have got the opportunity to meet him. I left to Mississippi and was with his mother as we buried him, and I got to see him. But this man taught me, I'm teaching him how to live, he's teaching me how to die. I never had that experience before. I was raised to live. So this man showed me how to fight for 3 years, fight and get through. I called him Mississippi Kid the whole time.
Thanks.
Yeah.
So we honor the Mississippi Kid with high honor.
For the lesson of how to die, huh?
Yeah, really, Cannamaste. I know it seems to have helped both of you spiritually.
Mhm.
You know.
Absolutely.
So we still have a few minutes if somebody else wants to say. Has a
If we can just,
dedication.
or if you just want to invoke a name, and that's,
I would like to mention, oh,
Yeah, because people have a chance to talk more at the end. You know, this is really getting ready for the meditation.
right. I would like to mention a couple of names. Can you hear me?
yes.
Okay, of the people who didn't live to see the legalization that we have in Virginia now. My very good friends, and they worked so hard, Rob Rowley and Beth Fratar Congello. These two people both, it was the main thing in their life. And before she died, Beth told me that she felt that because of her work with cannabis, that she had done something important with her life. And I'd just like to honor them and thank the spirit of cannabis for helping us get it legal in Virginia, because that's been a huge blessing. Cannamaste.
Cannamaste.
With
Honor
high.
those guys with high honor.
Yes.
Namaste.
All the
I'd like to
activists.
mention Frenchy Cannoli, who passed on earlier this year. One of the great teachers in cannabis, a very dear friend, a really high person, and one of the best makers of hashish you'll ever find. Om Namah Shivaya, Frenchy.
Honor him with high honor.
Yes, we honor him with high honor. Cannamaste.
I'd like to mention somebody that we haven't talked about in a long time. It just strikes me he's one of the guys that was one of the sort of ground activists, grassroots activists there in Prop 215 that I think was so important. Dr. Tom O'Connell. And Dr. Tom did the editorial stuff for the Drug Sense Weekly and all the editorial stuff that we did on instigating letters to the editor and all that was, I thought, really useful. But anyway, Dr. Tom was a Vietnam era vet. He called himself a chest breaker. He was a thoracic surgeon, but he really had this kind of Napier wit, I think they call it. And just a way of really cutting to the core of issues. And I remember as a first line activist, when I was just starting out, I had a little portfolio that I would carry around. Inside the front cover of it was a reprinted letter to the editor that was just so short and so succinct and so perfect. And that was Dr. Tom, you know, and so many others that helped us get to where we are now. And, you know, unfortunately didn't get to see it, but yeah, thank you.
Honor with high honor.
Yes, definitely.
Dr. Tom,
Tom
all the great
O'Connell.
doctors.
I remember him well.
My honor.
Is that Michael Green about to say the dedication?
I am. I just came in. Actually, I just got in. I landed in a hotel. I trying to get online with you guys. I noticed the first speaker that I just heard speaking about the man he worked with for 3 years in Clarksdale. If you'll recall, he learned to live. He's learning, living, or taught to live. His acquaintance is dying. Clarksdale was the crossroads of musical fame. So going to the crossroads where someone traded their soul, I just think that's kind of somehow entwines with all this. So I just thought I'd share that little piece of musicological history as well.
All
All
right.
right.
Good to see you all.
I'd like to just bring up Bill Piper's name, who recently passed, a drug policy specialist with the Drug Policy Alliance, who did a lot of lobbying on to the federal government to change laws and all kinds of stuff. So I'd like to honor him with high honor and Cannamaste to him.
Yeah, we've lost a lot of people, and I think we honor all of those people. And I think that maybe I would rededicate my thoughts to the people who are coming in to replace us, the next generation we hand the baton to as we move along. And that it goes for young people as well as older people, because we're always passing batons. And in this case, a spleef.
Which before the meditation, I'm gonna top it off.
So
Which
right,
is coming.
because we're not we don't have a doctor. We do honor various. I mean, we don't have a particular sect, religious sects of beliefs or whatever, but we accept all that the people are doing it. And so what we're really about is Cantheism is really about is connecting your inner self with cannabis in a conscious and mindful way in order to have a meaningful and spiritual experience with it. And so for the next part of the circle, what we're going to do is take an inward journey, and then we will again at the end come back out and join one another. Cannamaste.
Namaste.
And so this is a good time that you want to be as sacramentally, mindfully activated cannabinoid wise as you can be for the next moment here. And so do a little smoking right now, but also think about other stuff. You know, do you need to have a drink of water? Is it cool? Do you want to close a window? You want to get ready to really experience cannabis within you and reconnect with that spiritual meaning that it has for you. And so any maybe lip balm, something warm to put over yourself if it's cold, take off something if you're too warm. And then when you're settling down, you want to look into the eyes of the people on you on the computer screen or the ceiling.
What is that?
Why don't you go back to
Okay.
gallery?
Okay, here. I'll put the spotlight on. Spotlight?
Just go to gallery.
Gallery. Okay, where is it? I must say I'm rather,
Click there.
okay. No, it was here. Okay.
All right, the joys of technology. But I gave people a little more time to take another puff or two. But hopefully the edibles are activated by now and so forth. And so to take the inward journey, I suggest that you relax a little bit, maybe shake yourself up. Maybe you want to lie down or something like that. But you know, you want to like stimulate yourself a little bit, get your whole system going, because what we're talking about is your endocannabinoid system. And so what we're going to do next is we're going to dedicate that into it. We created a congregation of people who share this experience together, and then we're going to communicate more about it with each other. And so I'll start with the cannabinoid invocation. Oh, cannabis plant. Since time immemorial, humans have inhaled your activated phytocannabinoids for personal benefits, as have we just now. So let's all take a deep breath and open up your imagination. Something physical is going on, but it's something that you need to attune yourself to. It's like a colorblind person can recognize colors, but not without having to see them completely. And in a certain way, if you feel like you don't know how you connect with your cannabinoids, just try to visualize what's going on. Open up your imagination, visualize or sense that which you know is happening physically right now within you. For one thing, your tongue's a little dry. Your heart's beating a little faster. As you breathe and draw air into your lungs, cannabis vapors and oxygen blend with your blood. They're pumped directly to your brain and throughout your body. So feel what's going on. Your lungs connect to your heart, your heartbeat. That heartbeat is activating your cannabinoid receptors right now. So when you follow the blood flow, that shows you the pattern in which you're now activating yourself. CBD infuses the CB2 receptors in your nervous system, whether you know about it or not. You don't have to know because it happens. Your muscles, your limbs, your body tissues. Anandamide energizes your CB1 receptors. Activated THC pervades your brain. Feel your brain. If you can't feel it, visualize it. How do you imagine? Is it a pulsation? Is it a feeling of light and energy? What's going on? How does that feel when they're getting activated? They're inner core organs. It's transcending the body and mind barrier, even as you think and experience it right now. Because cannabinoids mark the conjunction of the physical and the psychic planes. They cross over right here from a plant to a person, from the earth to the plant to the person, resonant with many other cannabinoids and receptors that connect yourself with your spirit and plumb the very depths of our universal inner consciousness. So Jane Leonard, will you please take it from here?
Sure will. Thank you, Chris. So as we move into this space of meditation now, just make yourself as comfortable as you can, letting your senses be wide open, taking in sounds nearby and far away. Any smells or tastes, light and color, shape and form around you. Feeling the support of the surface beneath you. Feeling air on your skin, cool or warm. During this meditation, every experience is a messenger, inviting you to welcome and be with thoughts, emotions, sensations, whatever is arising for you, with openness and curiosity. So welcome and be with whatever is arising for you with non-judgment and fierce self-compassion. Bring your attention now with eyes open or closed to a heartfelt desire. Whatever's arising for you today, right now. Could be something that's arising spontaneously, or maybe there's something you've been working toward for a long time. Whatever it is, for just a few moments, welcome and be with your heartfelt desire with your entire body and mind. And now let your heartfelt desire go for now and just notice how it returns to you in your daily life as you go about walking and talking and being. Bring your attention now to an intention for this practice. A three-part intention. First, for yourself, what wish do you have for yourself through this practice? Maybe you'd like to stay awake and alert. Maybe you'd like to take a little power nap and set the stage for a lovely night's sleep. Second, for the people in your world, what is your wish for them? And third, for Mother Earth, what is your wish for her today? Take just a few moments now to welcome and affirm your intentions for this practice. An easy intention is always peace, peace, peace. And now bring your attention to your inner resource. This is a felt sense of well-being that's always with you. It's that part of you that's never harmed, is always whole. If it's helpful, feel free to recall a memory in which you felt seen and heard, a sense of connection, belonging, wonder, or presence. Take just a few moments now to welcome and nourish your inner resource. This inner resource is always here for you. So at any point in time during this practice or outside of this practice, feel free to weave in your inner resource. And now allow my words to be your words as we rotate attention through the body, experiencing sensation as we go. You may feel a little bit of sensation. You may feel a lot of sensation, but whatever you feel is perfect just as it is. Bring attention to the chin. Feeling into your chin with eyes open or closed. Giving up thinking, just feeling. Bring attention to the tip of the nose. Feeling your tip of the nose. Giving up thinking, just feeling. Bring attention to the left ear. The right ear. Both ears simultaneously as sensation. Giving up thinking, giving up story, just sensing. The outsides of the cheeks, the insides of the cheeks, the ceiling of the mouth, floor of the mouth, the lips, teeth, and gums, the tongue, the jaw. Bring attention to the left nostril, the right nostril, the flow of sensation in and out of both nostrils simultaneously, giving up thinking, just feeling. Bring attention to the left eye, eyebrow, temple, cheekbone, bridge of the nose, the entire left eye as sensation. The right eye, eyebrow, temple, cheekbone, bridge of the nose, the entire right eye as sensation. Both eyes simultaneously as radiant or shimmering sensation. And welcome yourself as the one experiencing all of these sensations, arising, unfolding, dissolving. Bring attention to the forehead, the crown of the head, the back of the head, the neck, the back of the neck, the sides of the neck, left and right, the front of the neck. Bring attention to the throat, the touch of air in the throat. Just feeling, and everything just as it is. Bring attention to the collarbones and shoulder blades, the shoulders, arms, and hands. The palms of the hands, left and right. The upper chest, middle chest, the abdomen and belly, upper back, middle back, lower back, the entire torso, front and back, left side and right side, as radiant or shimmering sensation. And yourself as the one experiencing all of these sensations, arising, unfolding, dissolving. Bring attention to the pelvis, the sacrum, the hips, legs and feet, the soles of the feet, left and right. The entire front of the body, the entire back of the body, left side, right side, inside the body, the surface of your body, a field of radiant, shimmering sensation. Now set your attention free to roam about the body and see if there's any sensation calling your attention, a physical sensation, a thought or emotion sensation, or perhaps a belief you hold to be true about yourself. Whatever the sensation is, feel it in the body. Where is it in the body? And what are the qualities of the sensation? Peeling back any story or any label. Feeling any temperature it may have, cool or warm. Is there tension or ease? Whatever's calling your attention, feel into it fully, without judgment, and with curiosity. And if nothing particular is calling your attention in this moment, this too is your experience. Everything just as it is. But if there is a sensation calling your attention, be it physical, emotional, a thought, or a belief, feel into it fully. Finding any center it may have or any edges. Now, if this sensation had an opposite in the body, where would it be? And what would it feel like? Feel into this opposite sensation fully. Finding any edges or center it may have. Now go back and forth between the original sensation and its opposite. Feeling one fully and then the other. Back and forth until when you're ready, feeling both opposites simultaneously. Now set your attention free again to roam about the body and invite it to land again in your heartfelt desire. Experience your heartfelt desire as true in this moment, as manifest right now, and just feel how that acts on your body. Come back to your intentions for this practice and reaffirm them here and now. And come back to your inner resource. This deep ground of well-being is always here for you. Weave it in anytime. Now slowly come back to your senses, taking in sounds far away and nearby, smells and tastes, feeling the support of the surface beneath you, the support of the floor or floors beneath the surface, the support of the earth beneath the floor, holding you. From behind the window shades of your eyes, light and color, and as you slowly open them, shape and form, coming back to the space of compassion and community. Grateful for taking this time for yourself, your well-being, and the well-being of this world. May everybody be happy. May everyone have a realization. May all those in sickness and pain find relief from suffering. May all those who hunger be fed. May all those who are homeless be sheltered. May all those unjustly jailed be freed. May peace, love, and prosperity come to each and everyone. Take your right hand and touch the ground. Reach your left hand toward the sky. And take your time now coming back. If you need a little break, go ahead and take one. We're just going to leave this nice and quietly for a few moments. And when we come back, Swami's going to help us with some oming. So take your time coming out. Namaste.
Cannamaste,
Cannamaste. You know, that was so beautiful, Jane. It feels like interesting to me that it takes you to a place within yourself that you want to stay for a while. And so in a way of coming back and letting go of that is something you kind of want to hang out to a little longer. But then I think that what we really want to achieve is to bring it back with you. So you're not really leaving that space. You're carrying that space back, and all the messages and the learning that we've gained from being in there, they're being within ourselves. And so your intention all along was that we would learn and discover about the sacrament by sharing it with one another. Essentially, though, the experience itself is just a brief moment where we're manifesting this experience of humans like who've shared this sacramental process over the years and so forth. And so we're just a brief moment in a rich history, like a thread of hemp that runs through a rich tapestry of the cannabis community. And so since we're in the center of all this connection, we try to expand our awareness and consciousness to those who have come before, and to extend our truths to those who come after, and share this with future generations as well. And since we're at the center of the connection, we like to take this opportunity for us to study the past and to project our own future. In this session that's coming up, we're going to share the experience in this space and honoring our forebears, the hemp gatherers and workers, the processors, the merchants, the healers, the spiritual guides, everyone lost in the midst of time. So we, the artists, the cave dwellers, the hut makers, the writers, fashion cultures, and build civilizations. We walk the path of the Zoroaster, the African animist, the Persians, ancient Persians, the Scythians, the Thracians, the Hebrews, the Hindi, the Coptic Christians, and more recent practitioners, including the Rastafari. And what Cantheism is about is connecting everyone together into a common way of sharing our sacramental moments together. What we are going to do is have Mark Berkson. Or do you want to take it? You just want to
We were going to have a
why don't we have an Om, and then
we are going to have an Om, but we also need to work in like a short little break for people to get water or take care of any other needs you need taken care of. And
so why don't we do the Om, Swami? Are you available to do?
And then we'll take like a 2-minute break and go into the Sunday school portion of this gathering we have here today. And you won't want to miss it. You guys are going to want to stay around for another incredible, I know it will be incredible, presentation or talk by Professor Mark Berkson, the chair of the religion department from Hamline University. So you'll want to be here for that. He's going to be, I believe, talking about the concept of oneness and in comparative religions. That's more or less. But anyway, it's always really entertaining. We're so honored to have Mark share with us. But before that, we're going to ask Swami to lead us in you could tell us a little bit about the Om, and then lead us in a group Om. And for this, you can unmute if we want to have like a continuous Om as well. And then we'll have our little 2-minute break and then come back for the Sunday school portion.
And just to remind people also, after Mark's when we're going to have the opportunity for people to talk about what they want to talk about, as well as reflecting on what Mark has to say. So with that, I turn it over to Swami.
Thank you very much, Chris, Mikki, and thank you also, Jane. That was a lovely meditation. And yeah, just what you were talking, Chris, about the past of cannabis history and the spiritual uses it's had for thousands of years, and also projecting into the future. That's what Om actually symbolizes. It's a simple three syllables, actually. Aum is a traditional way to talk about it. It's the traditional way to say it, actually. And so it's a singular sound, but actually it's got three pieces, three parts. And that is the basic threeness of all of our existence, such as we have past, present, and future, I, you, and it. And waking, dreaming, sleeping, those are many of the basic three elements of our life. And we have the tamasic, rajasic, and sattvic. So this threeness has to do with creation, preservation, and destruction as well. So when we make the chant of Om, we actually are, in the Hindu teaching, recreating the primeval sound which created the universe. And it's the sound which has been chanted for thousands of years and will chant into the future. So we become part of that chorus and we send the energy into the future as well. So it's a symbol of that continuity of past and present and future. So I like to do 3 ohms, and we'll just start out and hold them. Let's see. Here we go. Hear the sound of your own vibration. We create a unique note to sound with the universe. Third one. May the infinite inspiration beyond reason, beyond any imagination, the totality of spirit, may that consciousness fill us all with joy, love, compassion, and understanding. Om, 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 om,
Om, om, om. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Cannamaste.
Cannamaste.
Namaste.
So Cannamaste. And so we're going to introduce Mark.
Kind of already introduced
Okay.
Mark, but will it reintroduce Mark? Mark,
Oh, hi.
to the honor
Hey,
with.
I'm going to try to share my screen now just to make sure this works. And then I hope, let's see, I'm going to do this. Do you see it?
We do.
We do.
Hooray. Makes me very happy. And you can hear me all right, correct?
Yes.
Yes.
So if you want to, I don't know if you were going to do any kind of intro, but you don't have to. It's totally fine because like I'm just raring to go. But if you do have
Well,
something,
Mikki gave you a little bit of an introduction before. And so, you know, if you want to do any additional introducing, go ahead.
nope, I'm just gonna dive in because I really can't wait to talk with you about this and also to get your thoughts on it. These are things I've been thinking a lot about lately. And yeah, it's just wonderful to be back with all of you, first of all. And thank you, Jane, that was such a beautiful meditation. When my stories and thoughts in the mind try to pull me away, I try to locate Jane voice in my mind, reminding me to come back to this present moment sensation of the body. I hope we all can tap into Jane voice sometimes when we need that.
Thanks, Mark.
I've really missed our gatherings. And so today I want to talk about a big question in the study of religion and spirituality, really the biggest, in fact, the nature of ultimate reality, divinity, or what we would call God. But I promise that by the time I'm done, you will see the connection with cannabis. So one purpose of the talk is to show the ways in which cannabis is a sacred herb. In other words, what makes it spiritual when we use that word? Why is this a sacrament for our community? And I just want to offer some thoughts on this, but to kind of get there indirectly. So I just want to start with something I've seen both where I teach and with these larger demographic statistics. And that is that the rise of those who describe themselves as unaffiliated with any religious tradition. This is the fastest growing single religious demographic in the United States. People who, they're called the nuns because on surveys of what tradition they're affiliated with, they check none of the above. Now, the size of this group, as you can see, it's over a quarter of the American population now. And there are as many nuns as Protestants among Americans ages 18 to 29. So especially among young people. And as I've been teaching over the last 25 years or so, I found that a rising percentage of students that I work with define themselves in some way like this, unaffiliated. Sometimes they'll use the word spiritual but not religious, probably a phrase you've heard. Many people describe themselves this way. Some of them will just say I'm atheist or I'm agnostic. So I want to point out though that the significant majority of nuns or unaffiliated do not define themselves as atheists or even agnostics. Most say they believe in some higher power. That's why they'll use spiritual but not religious. There are many reasons, though, that they have disaffiliated themselves from religion. Some have to do with politics, but some have to do with conceptions of God. And in particular, so we have what I would call here the God problem for many people, for many young people, but just people overall, which is that they have problems believing in a God with these particular characteristics. So for example, anthropomorphic, meaning conceived of like a human being, like there's a being out there, like a big invisible being. And also we use the word agential, meaning that God is an agent. God has intentions and does things and intervenes and rewards and punishes and does miracles. That's not something that speaks to an increasing number of people, that particular vision of ultimate reality. One of the challenges is that the scriptures, like the Bible primarily, they are in a narrative genre, like they tell stories, lots of stories, and God is a character. So it's really hard to avoid thinking of God as a person. But the problem is when people think of God as a person, they fill it in with like a particular race and a particular gender. So a lot of times, even though people don't intend to consciously or want to, they think of God as a white male and with a beard, and they'll because we use the pronoun he, and however often people say, oh, but that's just like a neutral pronoun. No, it's not. It carries a gendered significance in it. So the thing is that people think of God as a man. And the problem here is that when people do that, it actually influences how they see authority and power in the world. Social psychologists have looked at this. So they found, for example, that most people, including most women, picture God as a white man. And when you believe God's a white man, you're more likely to see white men as good authority figures, like better qualified for a job or more representative as a leader. So the issue of gender also is obviously very significant. Mary Daly once said, in any tradition in which the God is male, the male will be seen as God. So there's a power to the metaphors we use to understand God. So I think by the time a lot of people get to college, that's what's in their head. Like it's very hard to get that out of their minds. So I was interested in what students now thought about God. So I decided I was going to do a survey and see, because when you ask people, do you believe in God? Whether they say yes or no, you don't really know what they're talking about until you ask them. I mean, people conceive of God as in radically different ways. So what are they accepting when they say, yes, I believe? And exactly what are they rejecting when they say, no, I don't? So anyway, I got a lot of good responses, a lot of different institutions, which made me really happy. And here is some of the things I found. 75% did grow up with a religious affiliation, but now only 40.4% currently have it. And a number of those have multiple affiliation, which is another interesting trend. Then even though about 90% of Americans believe in God, fewer than half of young people that I surveyed did. So you see there's a division, atheist, agnostic, and then not sure. And here's where it gets to the theological part. Over a third left their tradition because they no longer believe in the conception of God presented in their tradition. And what were they taught that led them away from this conception? God is a sort of personal, male, intervening, rewarding, and punishing being, right? So over half of the people raised with that belief ended up giving it up. So the reason specifically that they could no longer accept it is they find it unconvincing. They believe it contradicts reason and science, and that then there's an ethical issue. They're troubled by actions taken in God's name. So these are some of the common themes. So what I was interested in is the fact that despite this, their feelings about God, they do identify themselves as spiritual and caring about spirituality. Over 3/4 say that it's at least somewhat important, and plenty say that it's either very or extremely important. But where do they feel it? Where is the connection? Not for most of them in a religious building, fewer than half, church, synagogue, or mosque. By far, the biggest connections, what they feel is sacred is in nature. 80% of them feel it most there. But then also with other people, with loved ones and friends, and music, also over half. One of the things that interested me is the fact that theologically speaking, the metaphors they tend to use for God, they don't like the ones that have God as a ruler or as a judge. But when you phrase it like, what if divinity is like a vast ocean and all of us are like waves that are manifesting from that underlying reality? Oh, well, then half of them go, okay, well, then if that's what you mean by God or divinity, I could kind of see that. So really, there's so much about metaphor here. Also, young people are pluralists. They don't believe that only one religion has a monopoly on truth and heaven, and they reject textual literalism. They recognize that the text, however it was authored, is filled with metaphor and not just to be taken literally. Very few think that. So I was interested in the fact that these students came into my classroom to study the Asian religious traditions. And even the ones that define themselves as atheists were often drawn to conceptions of divinity or ultimate reality found in East and South Asian religions. And why is that? Because from their perspective, the Asian traditions are not burdened with the word God, right, which has all those associations, and they're not connected with texts that present themselves in a narrative form, like a story. Like the Tao Te Ching isn't just like a narrative or a story. The Upanishads, I mean, they have little stories in them, but they're not about God being a character and going around and doing things. But also the conceptions of God are non-anthropomorphic, non-dualistic. God isn't some separate being out there, non-agential, non-intervening. All of them are very different in that sense. So what I'm going to do just for really quickly for the next part of my talk is take you through these. I'm really mostly, I think we don't have time for all of them. I'll focus most of my time actually on Brahman because Swami is here, and I know that the Hindu tradition has a deep connection with much of what we're doing, but I will also talk about the others to some degree. And I see that students do feel drawn to these. So the Tao, as we see in the classical Taoist texts and in the religion of Taoism, is the one that underlies the myriad things. It gives rise to them, not as a separate being creating them, but literally as an unfolding of itself, right? So that's not dualistic. It's like emanationist, like if you want, where the Tao emanates itself into things. And that process is completely natural. That's why it's rooted in the way of nature. It's formless, which allows it to take myriad forms. It doesn't have a specific form. It doesn't look a certain way. And its primary activities are creation, nurturing, right? All sorts of metaphors of fertility and harmonizing. It's the great harmonizing force. So these are the things you find in, say, the Tao Te Ching, for instance. I also want to point out that there's a Neo-Confucian tradition that arises in the late imperial period in China. So like around the 16th, 17th centuries where it really starts flourishing. Brilliant thinkers. And the cool thing is that they synthesize Confucian, Taoist, and Buddhist thought. And so they have this metaphysical concept. Like a lot of people have heard of Tao, but not as many people do Li. This is pronounced Li. And it basically signifies a kind of pattern. Some people translate it as principle, but like it's like an underlying pattern to nature and the cosmos. And it also is found in every single being within nature and the cosmos. But it appears that things manifest themselves in form. And that is why we use the word, they use the word chi. So chi is energy, but it's also matter. Matter is like chi in a certain solid form, and it's also in its various other forms. So Li and Qi constitute the world. So what Li is, it's a little bit like, it's not a perfect analogy, but it's a little bit like what we say by the laws of physics. Like things are as they are because of those laws, right? But we only know those laws by investigating the things that are, and it reveals the pattern within. So the Li is like that with one crucial addition. It's moral. They believe that the universe has a moral fabric to it. So that if you really see what's there, it's not just stuff, right? But things like justice and compassion and love. Those are real things that are part of the universe. All of that, the whole pattern is available with each and every one of us. But we don't see it because it's always partially obstructed. And what obstructs it? Self-centeredness, ego, greed, all of that. So in order to release all of that, we practice. And what do we practice? Well, study is part of it. That comes from the Confucian side. Study along with reflecting on what you learn, but really crucially, and from the Buddhist side primarily, meditation. That's what Jane guided us through it partially, right? Clear the stories away. What do you find? What do you see when you look in your heart? And what they believed is what you find is a sense of seeing the whole cosmos as one body. Everything in the universe is one body. So the great Neo-Confucian thinker Wang Yangming said, the learning of the great person consists entirely in getting rid of the obscuration of selfish desires in order to restore the condition of forming one body with heaven, earth, and the myriad things. And finally, from the Hindu tradition, we have the concept of Brahman. Now, of course, these concepts are ultimately ineffable, right? We can't fully describe them, but there is a common description of Brahman which brings together three different words: Sat, Chit, and Ananda. Sat is essentially, it's not a being, it is being itself, which is why it can also be translated truth, because what it really means is what truly is, isness. And then Chit is consciousness, not consciousness of any particular thing of this or that, but pure undefiled consciousness. And if you think of pure undefiled consciousness, like no specific object that it's focusing on, it's the same in all of us. It has to be. It's the underlying awareness that brings all things to light, right? So an Ananda is the feeling of bliss you get when you realize your oneness with being and consciousness. So Satchidananda is Brahman. But a fascinating thing in the Hindu tradition is that it can be seen as non-personal, nirguna, without form, just vast, infinite, right? But it can also be seen as saguna, with form, in order for us, the limited finite beings we are, to connect with it. It can take form as the various gods and goddesses. We recognize that the limitation, that in a sense the divine comes to that because we ourselves need that. We are sensory beings. So some people will connect up with it through a form, but they recognize that they're all expressions of one underlying reality. So I want to just give you a quote. Haridas Chaudhry writes, oh, and another crucial thing, so that's also oneness with each of us. With each of us, our soul, our Atman is the same. It's the identical with the ultimate essence of the cosmos, Brahman. So Haridas Chaudhuri writes, the truth is that individual selves are in essence different unique centers of creative self-expression of the same undivided reality, Brahman. So Brahman expresses the oneness of existence, the unity that exists below all multiplicity. And realizing the oneness with that produces this profound moral transformation as well as bliss. So now to bring this all together. This is what has been called, what we're talking about here, the oneness hypothesis. And the oneness hypothesis basically says that there's a view of the world, and it contains a deep truth within it that is fundamentally relational, right? That we are always related to a larger whole. And so it's an alternative to these more self-regarding individualistic accounts. We are connected with all of this. So you come to see yourself as part of a larger whole, and that transforms your very notion of what the self is. You get a more expansive concept of the self. PJ Ivanhoe has written a book on the oneness hypothesis like this. So the thing about oneness is, paradoxically, there's many forms of it. So for example, I put this list here. You can feel one with a particular group of people, right? In other words, there's a larger reality that transcends all of you, but includes all of you. You make it up together like a family, right? The family both transcends you as an individual, but it also includes you. You're one with it. So, or it could be a tribe, right? Even as big as a nation, people can feel oneness with their nation. Of course they do. They sacrifice themselves for it. And then you could move all the way to humanity itself. I feel a connection with all human beings. And some traditions kind of just go to that place, right? The oneness of humanity. But why stop there? How about the oneness of all sentient beings? And beyond that, the entire natural world, consciousness itself, being itself. So all these traditions, when we talk about deities, we talk about the concept of divinity, it points us towards oneness at all these multiple levels. And my feeling about it is that it's almost like a nested realm of realities, so that each level transcends and includes everything within it. So for me, the key thing is, right? So the Tao, for example, that might point to more of a unity with nature, for example. Brahman goes off to like the unity of consciousness and being. Is there a value in having a concept that transcends and includes everything? That's the question of the divine for me. That's the question of God. Is there a value and importance to some concept that transcends and includes everything? And I believe that if you stop spiritual and moral development at any lower level than totality, it can be harmful, right? If I feel oneness with my family, my tribe, my group, that still could create a border, a boundary between us and them, between me and others, right? That can turn to hatred and conflict. So let's transcend that. But humanity, that's beautiful, but it can separate us from other species, right? Create another hierarchy that can be harmful. Okay, but what about nature? What about, right? Keep going, keep going. So to me, the idea is there's a value to a concept that transcends and includes all. But it's problematic when that concept is seen as a separate being or person or something. That's where it's going. So to me, the nature of moral spiritual development is that continuously transcending, so that all boundaries are transcended and the total experience of oneness occurs. So what does it mean when you have the experience? What if you begin to tap into that sense of oneness? You get an expanded sense of self. So part of the benefit comes with having this idea that you are transcended by and included in something beyond yourself. So for example, you get this sense of enhanced well-being. When you find something that both transcends and includes you, you realize that you're not bounded by the limitations of just say, oh, it's just my physical body, which itself actually isn't fully a boundary between you and the world. Every time you breathe, every time you eat, you're always in exchange with the world in some way. When you realize this, you feel your oneness, you get this enhanced well-being. a stronger sense of connection to, an expanded sense of self that can give rise to care and compassion, which can lead to moral action. You also get an enhanced sense of gratitude. And what fascinated me, there's social scientific experiments. Social psychologists look into how the experience of oneness actually produces a heightened sense of gratitude, which then leads to and pro-social attitudes like more empathy, compassion, and generosity for others. Another one that is fascinating to me, I didn't even anticipate this fully, is the importance of the sense of awe. How you feel a sense of awe when you feel one with something larger than yourself. Just a really quick example. They found that if you put somebody in a forest for even a short period of time, like a half an hour, amidst really tall, beautiful trees, it actually will then make them more compassionate and generous. And that lasts for like a while, that effect. So what is it? Even having plants in an office actually has an effect. So anything that produces that sense of oneness beyond yourself. So the social psychologists who did the experiments, Edward Bonner and Harris Friedman, concluded, awe has been seen as enticing people to appreciate their sense of selfhood as less separate and more interrelated to the larger context of existence. This leads to more pro-social values, which means they basically are more committed to helping others, more compassionate. And as I mentioned, I think this really gets evoked with concepts of ultimate oneness. So to just wrap this up here, these are the senses of ultimate reality that I think speak most to people who are perhaps agnostics, maybe consider themselves atheists, spiritual but not religious, unaffiliated. A concept that's non-anthropomorphic, isn't seen as an agent intervening and doing miracles. Non-dual, isn't seen as separate. Strong connection with nature, leads to no conflict with reason and science, has to have a moral foundation, supports social justice work, and creates that sense of oneness with no boundaries that both transcends and includes all other levels of reality, and affirms our value as individuals, along with the emphasis on oneness. Now, finally, what does cannabis have to do with all this? I'll just conclude with a quick observation, and then I would like you to reflect on that. I would love to hear what you have to say. But we've looked over in the past when I've given these other talks about Hinduism, Taoism, and Rastafari. And I argue basically that cannabis allows us to connect up with these larger realities, which is what makes it such a beautiful spiritual guide. We know that the plant has all these many demonstrated uses, industrial, right? Clothing and skincare products and oil, culinary, medicinal. But what makes it spiritual? I think it's because it connects us with those realities that transcend and include us and help us move away those blockages of self-centeredness and the distorting lenses of ego. So it is a perspective with which you can see and also see through the narratives and frames that we put on the world, right? These stories that always center on the ego. You get lessons in oneness and interdependence. So to conclude, I think what's fascinating is that look at three levels, just the three levels of oneness. One, we can talk about oneness with other people. That's a really key part of that sense of connection. And you see this in the Rastafari practice of reasonings, gathering together, sharing ganja, and opening up about deeply important things about spirituality and politics and social justice. And of course, there's music. So this powerful sense of oneness talks about, you see in the quote, heightening unity and communal feelings. So cannabis connects us with others. This is part of what makes Cannamaste so beautiful, but also with nature. So you get the reasonings in Rastafarian, but then you get the Taoist emphasis on this oneness, the pulse of nature underlying all multiplicity. And it can cultivate, as we all know, I think, a deep connection with the natural world. And this is Magu. This is the goddess of cannabis, the divine cannabis goddess in Taoist tradition. And this is finally the way that Hinduism brings us into connection with these profound forms of oneness. that's part of the beauty of the Hindu tradition, is with all of the magnificent multiplicity it recognizes, there's always this emphasis on the underlying reality, the oneness of Brahman. And by seeing it, all boundaries are dissolved. So I have this wonderful quote, Madhusudan Bao, we all know that God resides everywhere. Oh, my apologies. But we see him in bits and pieces, right? That he says that cannabis allows him to see God in his entirety, sight of such unalloyed joy that tears well up in his eyes. And then from that amazing report by the Indian Hemp Commission, that Bhang enables the sadhu to rest in the eternal till the eternal, processing him body and soul, frees him from the haunting of the self, and receives him into the ocean of being, which is a beautiful metaphor for oneness. So, final words. This is why I'm so grateful for this community, because I think we share these values of a profound commitment with open-minded, open-hearted conversation, the oneness with other people, a deep sense of connection with an appreciation for the natural world. After all, I mean, our sacrament is a direct connection, as Chris so beautifully said, with earth and with the larger natural world. And ultimately, through the guidance of meditation, with what Jane gives us, can produce a diminishment and ultimately a dissolution of the boundaries we artificially construct that prevents us from feeling that sense of connection with the higher realities that transcend us. So cannabis, wisely used, I think can help on the spiritual path. It could make us better people because we have a heightened awareness and appreciation of connection, interdependence, and oneness that moves us beyond self-centeredness, we hope, and some of its accompanying vices, greed and envy, and leads to enhanced well-being and more empathy and compassion. And these virtues and emotions arise from the experience of oneness with other beings. So the fact that cannabis can help us attain these experiences and their benefits that flow from them tells us why it's not only a beneficial resource and a healing medicine, but also a sacred herb. So thank you, and I look forward to your thoughts.
That was amazing.
Bravo.
Bravo. Thank you, Mike.
Thank you. Wow.
My Bishop Sant here. My first comment. The original Christians observed cannabis, and the term Christ or Messiah means the anointed one. And as I understand it, that is a baptism ceremony into the holy anointing oil, which is like 24 pounds of cannabis for 2 gallons of olive oil, plus acacia, sweet cinnamon, which is the MAOI inhibitor, and then frankincense and myrrh. And historians state that that would take 7 to 10 days to be sober from, back to where you could, be back out in public or whatever. And I mean, I think that's kind of an interesting concept that most people don't know. And you were mentioning that the Rastafari and the Hindi all observed the cannabis, and I think that the original Christians did too. And I wanted to kind of make that statement.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I'm really glad. First of all, thank you for bringing that in. And by the way, the 3 traditions I mentioned, yes, there's a wonderful place for cannabis in them. By no means is that list exhaustive. Let's just emphasize that, because that's crucial. We would have not had time to cover everything. So I really appreciate it, because a beautiful thing is, you find, I won't speak a lot about this, but you do find evidence both linguistically, etymologically, but also archaeologically of biblical use of cannabis. I mean, and it's found in, in grave sites, it's found in incense burners, near incense burners. So when you read about how important incense is and burning incense, what was in the incense burner, right? And
absolutely.
I know Chris has talked about the Scythians before. They would put it in a tent, they would close it off and then burn it in large. It wasn't like an individual thing like this, it was permeating the air. So thank you.
Absolutely. The original, actually the Jewish religion, as I understand it, is based on the Holy of the Holies being enveloped in the white smoke of the acacia extract, which is pure DMT. So, I mean, that's the foundation. I've heard rabbis say that the foundation of the Jewish religion, or the understanding of DMT, is that DMT is the the holy essence of Adam. And when he was cast from the garden, it was drawn into the planet. And that's why it's in everything, except for in higher amounts in the sacramental plants. I thought that was kind of interesting too, but sorry, not to get too far off topic. I mean, cannabis, I believe, is the foundational and that sacrament for everything. And all entheos are put here by the creator so that we can have that conversation with him. We can have that awareness, and we can have that oneness understanding that of one heart and of one mind brings us into alignment with creation and divinity in our personal lives here. We can not strive to take what is mine. I mean, it's just what I'm in control of right now because these are the tools I need, you know?
Joy here. And along those lines of oneness, you know, I was struck by when I first moved to Seattle in the late 1990s, and my sons, who are now 27 and 29, were much younger, obviously. I was attracted to this ad that I kept seeing. I was raised Jewish, and it was for Kadima, a progressive Jewish community. And bear in mind, it was 1998, and it said, we welcome all LGBT, which was a very, new concept to sort of be putting out there in newspapers. And I was just so attracted to it just because I couldn't imagine this progressive Jewish community that was just so out there with these progressive terms. And we joined it, and it was basically such a progressive Jewish community that it had redone all of the prayers, because there was a female rabbi who was non-secular or secular. I admit that I constantly confuse these terms, but basically she rewrote all of the prayers so that Adonai, the word for God, was taken out of the prayers, and another word, which equated to spirit of the wind, was replaced. And even the idea of the brucha of God God making the bread, even those prayers had been changed to, Mother Earth gave us the ingredients, and then we the people made the bread, and we thank the spirit of the wind. And it was just this fascinating concept. So half of the folks that attended were secular, and half were not. So half basically believed in this concept of God and half didn't. But what, of course, I began to understand is everyone sort of believed in the same thing. It was this use of the term God that created this automatic dictionary, and we're not asking ourselves. And certainly that comes up in the emerging hemp and marijuana industries all the time, right? Like, what do you mean when you say biomass? What do you mean when you say full spectrum extract? Well, what do you mean when you say God? Do you mean this character on a throne that is male and white? Do you mean this intelligence, this entity that's out there? And so I think when we talk about really creating oneness, we need to talk about that speech, right? And with, so respectfully, because Mark, oh my God, you have just filled me tonight, and thank you endlessly for sharing. And also when you said, I've got this great quote, and in that great quote talked about God and the his with an H and a he, and it wasn't a great quote to me, right? Because I don't see God that way. But so I think as we create oneness, that's very important for us to understand, just like I learned in 1998 at Kadima, that interestingly enough, we were all fairly enlightened people, super, active, woke folks, generally speaking. In my son's Hebrew school, they taught it. WTO had come, was coming to Seattle at that time, and they were doing skits on how to protect themselves from tear gas. So that's how progressive this Jewish community was. But that's what I learned was, geez, we actually all kind of believe the same thing, but that word God keeps getting in the way. Thank you for listening.
Oh, thank you so much for that. That was wonderful. I mean, actually, there's a couple of books that address this so well. Is that the question is, do you keep the word? Is there a value to keeping the word God? And there's a book by a rabbi, Mecklenburger, and it's called Why Call It God? That was the name of the book. And what was really fascinating is he ends up with a very non-personal, non-agential kind of conception, like the one I was talking about, but he says there's still value in calling it God. I mean, it connects you with the tradition, but you put your finger on the most crucial thing. This entire thing is a project of interpretation. Interpretation underlies everything. So I tell my students, like, if people ask, do you believe in God? Really, the follow-up question you immediately have to say is, you tell me what you mean by God, and I'll tell you if I believe in that, because there's so many different conceptions. So I want to say two other quick things. One about the gendered language that you encounter. This is such a challenge. It's like, because you find all this wisdom from history, right? With all these great thinkers and texts, and they're all just laden in this language, right? So the beautiful thing is now, and I tell to my students this, when you see voices, new voices coming in, look at, interpret and text in new ways, communities that had previously been excluded. So we're looking at feminist theology, transgender theology, gay theology, like all over the last couple of weeks. You bring these new voices, new eyes to a text, totally new things are revealed, some of them which are not pleasant to look at in your scriptures, but some of them reveal these powerful potentials for transformation. So at the end, this is the last thing I'll say, I promise. The task at hand, I think, when you talk about theology with people, is don't say things like, well, does God exist? Let's figure out if God exists. You're still using the word. Maybe the way to think about it is, what metaphors, because that's all you got, what metaphors best capture the senses of oneness that are truest and most powerful and beautiful about the world? That's what we're all looking for, is what metaphors. So if that word is just too baggage laden, let's cast it aside and find something more beneficial.
So this is Sister Kate. Can you hear me? Yes. I just wanted to say that where we weigh in on this is that a lot of damage has been done by naming God. I liked your study. And that was very enlightening, because a lot of damage has been done, I think, to the women since Christianity made God like a white guy over 50. And that became the rule of the land. So we definitely think we're not going to turn people's attention back to putting Mother Earth at the center of their spiritual practices until we start referring to God logically as a she, because women create. If our creator God created us, it's logical. And using a neutral preposition or the wind is okay too. But if we were to weigh in, we say that because of the patriarchal religion and because of the patriarchal God, for 2,000 years, women have suffered the brunt of poverty in all nations. And when I say women, I mean also people of color and LGBT, people who don't neatly fit gender roles. So and we draw a line from that up to 100 years ago, when suddenly, 100 years ago, suddenly, after thousands of years, abortion becomes a sin. Suddenly, after thousands of years, we decide we're going to frack the oil out of the planet. And suddenly, after thousands of years, we're going to make hemp and cannabis illegal. So we draw a direct line between those three things being so bad for the people in the planet and being a result of 2,000 years of a patriarchal God allowing men to make wars and dominate the planet in that name. So I'm just agreeing with you, I guess, at the end of the day.
Wonderful. Just incredible to share. So much learning. Thank you for that, sister.
Thank you so
May
much.
I say also, thank you, sister. And I think when I was going to say also that when you worship the goddess, and all of a sudden that word takes on a different kind of meaning, right?
It's
that all of a
soft.
sudden the
It's
goddess
mothering.
now
Yes, it's soft and
is
mothering.
mothering, yeah. And in Hinduism, there's a whole high percentage of Hindus who primarily worship the goddess and the form of the goddess who is independent and powerful. And that's the tradition that I've been initiated into. And it just turns everything on its head. And so what I actually see is I use the word consciousness in all sorts of ways. And I love when you said Satchitananda, that being consciousness bliss is the essence. That's all that we can say about the ultimate reality. But Hinduism has like 3,333,000 gods and goddesses. And I take that metaphor to mean that the divine consciousness will present itself to each and every one in the form which you are most readily willing to accept that as a visitation from the divine. So the divine comes to you in the way that you can see it, because the divine knows that, because the divine is not separated from us. The ultimate consciousness is the totality of all consciousnesses. And there's no break and no division within consciousness. We have a veil of ignorance that prevents us from seeing that connection to all consciousness. So we are all consciousness, just like all insects and all animals and all plants and all molecular, all bacteria and fungi are all conscious, and they are the totality of the consciousness expanded beyond anything that our own minimal consciousness can even begin to speculate about. When you worship the goddess to begin with, it just changes the whole thing around, and you become so thankful, and you worship beauty in another way and nurturing in a way. So now it's still a God in that sense, but it takes it to another dimension when you say goddess. I think just say it to yourself, each one of you, and see goddess and how that works with you. And there's obviously Hinduism has a huge patriarchal element, but there's also the consort of every god has a goddess, and the goddesses themselves are independently powerful. Anyway, I just wanted to leave you with a thought of the goddess. Thank you so much, Mark. We always learn so much from what you're researching and how you share it with us.
Yes. Thank you, Swami.
So you're gonna stick around for the Om at the end then, Sil, right? Or does that mean you're taking off?
No.
Oh,
No,
no, I'm still here.
Okay.
I have a question.
Yes.
A simple question is, how does the concept of death fit in with consciousness and oneness?
Yeah,
Well,
that's a
that's a
little
simple
question there,
question.
Mikki. There's a couple of quick things I want to mention, and one of them is connected with consciousness expansion. And I think many of you probably have read about this or are following this to some degree, which is the use of psychedelics, entheogens, consciousness transforming substances for end of life care for people who are coming to terms with death. So the first thing that comes to mind when you ask that question, and then I'll give one other thought, but I don't want to go off too far on this, but one of them is, why is it that a person, and the effect was significant, people who showed high degrees of fear about, say, a terminal illness, which is completely understandable, that kind of, I can't imagine, right? So much of it was reduced, in many cases, to a minimal level with guided psychedelic therapy. And one of the reasons we could imagine why such a thing would be possible is that you get a sense of yourself as part of something greater. That's where the oneness comes in. The fear of loss and death is the loss of, okay, me, my particular self. But what if that self is seen as an expression of and deeply interdependent and connected with all other things, which will, in a sense, because of the transcendent portion, will continue on after your individual death. And there's some solace and comfort, I think, provided there. So I think that's one way that could happen, that the more separate and isolated and alienated a person feels, the more they fear the loss of that one thing they have, the self. And the more deeply connected to the larger realities in the sense of oneness you have, the more, it's not like death becomes suddenly easy for someone to, it's being human, right? We naturally have this fear, but that there is also that sense of a larger story beyond our own single individual story. So in other words, if we are constituted by all the relationships we have and the larger realities, then one thread of our story ends with our death, but many threads continue. And there are aspects that continue on. And so the other thing I was going to say was, some people who've studied this said you could think in terms of modes of continuity. They're like modes of symbolic immortality. Like, how do we live after our bodies die? If you think that there's some kind of persistence of existence after death, right? The soul lives on, the mind lives on, There's your answer to that, right? But what if you're one of those people who either strongly doubts or thinks, no, what if death is the end, right? Well, then the other modes come into play. And those modes are through your relationships, the people whose lives you touch, the influence that goes on, right? There's that line, or family lineage. There's the creative work, the things you've put into this world, the institutions you've contributed to, the artistic creations, all of those things are part of it. Then there's nature, right? And to step back and see yourself and all of life and death as part of these cycles of nature, as the Taoists, right, remind us over and over again. And then there's that larger, more mystical sense of oneness of all being. And so when you get this idea of, say, one reality, like the ocean and the waves metaphor, that's why it's popular. The Upanishads also talks about clay, like one ultimate reality made of clay, and everything, every individual thing is like a little thing made from on the surface of the clay that then goes back in and other things are made, but it's always just clay. It's all a play of clay, right? Once you realize like, oh, I'm that, like, right? I'm part of that. Or mushrooms. You've seen the Fantastic Fungi documentary? All those little mushrooms poking up on the surface of the ground, right, are part of one giant organism that's under the surface. And if we could see under the surface, if we're like the mushroom, if I may, like popping up above the surface, thinking we're all individuals, the sense of oneness, you're like, oh, I see. We're all manifestations of one larger reality. So to me, that's, I think, how oneness can help come to terms with death.